Good evening and welcome to our HCSS Teacher Evaluation webinar. I am Carolyn Forni and I'm joined by Sarah Gullett. We are the curriculum supervisors at Hampden Charter School of Science, and we're going to walk you through our evaluation system at HCSS tonight and introduce you to how we evaluate our teachers and combine it with student achievement goals. So as the advertisement for the webinar said, this webinar is for educators who would like to learn more about our teacher evaluation model. We base it off the Danielson model, but we also add our own domain where we look into student achievement and student learning goals. So who we are at HCSS, the mission of the Hampden Charter School of Science, we are a tuition-free college preparatory school. We have two campuses, one located in Chicopee, founded in 2009, and one located in West Springfield, founded 5 years ago. Our mission is to provide a college preparatory focused education to the youth of every race, ethnic group in Western Massachusetts. We offer a safe, academically challenging school where care about our students, and our core values are respect, responsibility, resilience, and excellence. And as I said, I am Carolyn Forni, and I'm joined by Sarah Gullett. We are the curriculum supervisors. We work at central office. We work for both schools and all teachers within the Hampden Charter School of Science. So our agenda this evening, what we're going to talk about, first we will introduce teacher evaluation, what it means for us at HCSS, talk about the Danielson model in practice, and then talk about how we use the Danielson model, talk about student achievement at HCSS, how we combine that into our evaluation. We're going to cover our evaluation implementation, how we actually evaluate our teachers, and then answer any questions that you might have. So please save any questions for the end and we will answer them then.
Okay, so I'm going to start, and as Carolyn said, my name is Sarah Gullett, and I am one of the curriculum supervisors for Hampden Charter School of Science, working in the central office. So just going to talk a little bit about the Danielson model and how we use it in our evaluation. So how do we evaluate teachers? The most important thing is that we see HCSS as a learning community, not just for the students, but also for staff. So we try to give, and we aim to give, frequent feedback and evaluations for teachers to help them build upon and improve pedagogy. So we also work closely with the department chairs and the instructional coaches. So when a teacher receives feedback, they can go to those individuals and they can get support in implementing new ideas and things in order to make their practices in their classroom better. And the evaluation is also part of how we are held accountable to the state, and it helps us to ensure the rigorous delivery of instruction. We hold our students to high standards, we hold our teachers to high standards as well, and in turn, that successfully promotes student achievement. So if you're not familiar with the Danielson model, the Danielson has 4 domains, and then we add in our 5th domain, which is student achievement. You'll hear a little bit more about that later, but the student achievement is related to setting student learning goals for each student in the classroom, which is largely based on their previous year's MCAS scores, AP data, and PSAT data. And then we merge that together with the 4 domains of Danielson, which we'll also talk about, which is planning and preparation, the classroom environment, instruction, and professional responsibilities. So at this time, we'll just give a brief introduction to the Danielson model with a short video, and then we'll go into more detail on the 4 domains. I can't hear it.
Do I need to be unmuted? Because I can hear it through mine.
I can't hear it. I don't know if the other participants can hear it.
Sorry, everybody.
We'll try again. If the video doesn't, if we can't, get the audio to work, that's not an issue. We'll just go over it. But it was just to give you an introduction.
Can open up the rubric at least.
Okay. Yep, that's fine. So as you can see here, each domain has several components. And what you would have seen or heard in the video is that the Danielson model was developed through years of observations and research and collections on what are the practices that happen within the classroom. And also before the teacher enters the classroom and after the teacher has assessed the student that best help achieve student success in the classroom. And so I'm not going to go into the domains here because we have those slides later, but you'll see that each of the domains has 4 categories, or each of the components has 4 ratings. So a teacher could be not meeting expectations, partially meeting expectations, or exceeding expectations. And it's totally fine. We let teachers know that it is normal to be partially meeting expectations, especially if you are a new teacher. Our goal is if a teacher is partially meeting or not meeting in an area, is for them to work with an instructional coach or department chair and to get the feedback and then to be meeting expectations by the end of the year. We'll go back to the presentation now.
I did get the volume working, I believe.
Okay.
I'd like to watch it.
In writing the framework, I collected together people's ideas into several big domains.
The framework for teaching consists of 4 domains. Domain 1, planning and preparation. Domain 2, the classroom environment. Domain 3, instruction. And Domain 4, professional responsibilities. The framework for teaching is composed of 22 components within these 4 domains. Each component describes an important aspect of teaching, and taken together, the components capture everything important about that domain. Teaching at each component is further defined by 4 levels of performance. These levels of teaching performance are described in rubrics, which provide educators with a roadmap for how they can improve their teaching.
The framework for teaching is used to definitely enhance my lessons. The rubric allows me to pick what will be used to reach the goals for the children, to enhance myself.
Every component in it is grounded in solid research, and it's also been validated. And what that means is that when teachers' performance is assessed on the components of the framework, those whose performance is rated at a high level, their students learn more than the students of teachers who perform at a lower level. That is, high performance in teaching predicts high levels of learning with students. So teachers can be confident that when they are evaluated using it, they are being evaluated on the important aspects of teaching.
It generates both equity and clarity for teacher performance. There is a common understanding of proficient practice and a common understanding that teaching is both a sum of all its parts, as well as a very detailed but very subtle practice that requires a subset of skills that aren't always evident on the surface level.
When you look out your window, what do you see?
Traffic.
Traffic. So if
Water.
Right in the voice of a 5-year-old, not of a senior looking back on the experience. Now,
The framework for teaching is a generic instrument. There's not a different one for middle school science and high school English and kindergarten, right? It's one framework. The framework for teaching is not a checklist of specific behaviors. It can't be, because the behaviors themselves are different. But the ideas underlying what you observe are the same. The underlying structure is the same, and that's what's important for people to understand.
If you have difficulty, what do you do next?
You would just redo it until you get it right and keep checking yourself.
Good.
As a teacher, I think I can grow from the value of the framework. I think if I'm given a suggestion on an observation, I can grow with that. I can learn from it. We want to be able to be the distinguished teachers that we know we can be.
When we have an evaluation system of teaching, it can't just be about what teachers do, because that's not sufficient. Then the evaluation of teaching has to also understand teachers' thinking about how they decided to do X rather than Y. And therefore, any serious evaluation of teaching practice can't just be about what people do, but it has to be understanding also their reasons for doing it.
Okay, thank you. At this point, I think we'll transition into talking about each of the domains, and my colleague is going to talk about domains 1 and 2.
So domain 1, as you saw from the rubric and from the video, is planning and preparation. This is what teachers do before class begins, before the school year begins, at the beginning of each quarter, semester, month, preparing for their lessons and their curriculum. So what it means from Danielson's perspective is that teachers' plans and practice reflect extensive knowledge of the content, structure of the discipline, instructional learning outcomes, and reflect high level of learning. So when we as curriculum supervisors are looking at domain 1, this is when we're looking at lesson plans. We are reviewing what it is teachers have planned out for the week. At HCSS, lesson plans are due for the week on Monday morning, and we review them. We look at the standards, we look at the objectives, we look at the learning activities and how students are going to meet the objectives each day, and then each week, and then each quarter. It also is our Canvas. Canvas is our learning management system. So this is where our lessons are posted. This is the online access students have to their textbooks, their resources, their lessons. And we look at what teachers have put in there, how they have planned and prepped for their classes. And when we think about this from a student achievement perspective, because all of this evaluation is going to tie into how well our students are doing and how well they do at the end of the year, our teachers use backwards design. They look at how students did on previous data. They look at last year's test results. They look at last year's grades and they say, how did these students do? How can I get them to do better? What do they need? And they use that in their planning and preparation. They create their units, they create their daily lessons, their weekly lessons with end goals in mind. Oftentimes this end goal might be the quarterfinal, or it might be the project-based learning assignment that they are working on, but they use that data to drive their planning. And again, like I said, from previous assessments overall, from previous years, from MCAS to help prepare their lessons. Domain 2 is the classroom environment. So what this means is that the classroom is a place where learning is valued, high expectations are the norm, there's caring and respect, there's a mutual rapport between teacher and students. The classroom environment is safe, learning is accessible to all students. So what that looks like at HCSS, we do frequent walkthroughs of all of our teachers, 15-minute walkthroughs in the classroom throughout the quarter. We as curriculum supervisors also do full period observations of our teachers each quarter. And in these observations and walkthroughs, we're looking at domain 2 and domain 3. And with domain 2, we are looking at the behavior management. We know of teachers that have middle school and high school students, student behaviors might not always be where we want them to be, but we are looking at how teachers respond to those behaviors. And we're using Danielson's rubric to see how is the teacher following our behavior management model at HCSS? Is the classroom safe? Is the classroom an effective learning environment? And that's what we're looking at in domain 2. And so in conjunction with student achievement, it's simple, like the video said, and like we know as educators, a classroom that's conducive to learning, it's going to benefit all students. If the classroom is safe, if everybody's able to access the education, student achievement will follow.
Sorry, that's me. So the other thing that we look at when we go into the classrooms is domain 3, which is instruction. Instruction is really, the meat. It's what is happening. How is the teacher delivering the content to the students? And really, really important is is it rigorous, and are the students engaged? So when we go into a classroom, we want to see that students are engaged in activities that are appropriate for the instructional outcomes and students' level of understanding, and that the structure and pacing of the lesson allows for student reflection and closure. So we do have an instructional model that we follow for our 67-minute classes. We do expect that each teacher begins with a do now. Other schools might call that an activator, and then ends with an exit ticket or a closure. And whatever happens in between typically follows a gradual release model with the teacher's instruction. I do, we do it together, and then you do it on your own. However that may look for the classroom, we're looking that it is appropriate for the student's level. So if I walk into a classroom of seniors and they're being expected to write just a paragraph, that might not be rigorous instruction for them. But if I walk into a class for 6th grade and they're being instructed on writing a paragraph, that's, that would be rigorous for them. So it all has to do with the level and the content of the course. We also use accountable talk. If you're not familiar with accountable talk, it's really just a discussion format, and it's how students at colleges just naturally discuss in classrooms, and we're trying to teach the students how to use that talk. So the teacher will pose a question, an open-ended question, and the students will respond. The teacher will be off to the side, and the students will be driving the discussion and responding to each other using accountable talk stems that we have posted throughout the classroom, and responding politely to each other, saying, I agree with so-and-so, and then giving evidence to back up their claims, or I politely disagree with so-and-so, and then also giving evidence. So we look for that to be happening in the classroom as well as a good practice of instruction. We also look for our teachers to use frequent checks for understanding, and that could look different depending on the type of class it is. A check for understanding in an English class might be a quick poem and a couple of questions about the poem. In a math class, it might be a couple problems given as an exit ticket, or really just informal checks for understanding, like, okay, so-and-so just said that the answer to the math problem is this. Thumbs up if you agree, thumbs down if you disagree, sideways if you're not sure. So just frequent checks for understanding, we look for that to be happening in the classroom as well. And this obviously naturally affects student achievement. We want our teachers, as mentioned before, to use data-driven instruction. So they're using those checks for understanding, those closures, those exit tickets, those do nows, and the activities that you're doing in the class, not just to assess the student and give them a grade, but to see where the students are at in order to then drive their lesson plans for the following week or the following unit. We also have our teachers give mini assessments, which are really just quizzes throughout the quarter, and to review those mini assessments in class to assess student understanding. So that is another part of instruction that we evaluate here at HCSS. And lastly, the last domain of the Danielson model is domain 4, which just is all of the stuff that happens outside of the classroom, the professional responsibilities. So we expect the teachers to complete all their contractual duties with professionalism and diligence. It's one thing to do it with a smile, don't drag your feet about it, and that teachers' interactions with their colleagues are positive and appropriate. So what it looks like at HCSS is submitting their lesson plans in a timely manner, having their grades up to date. We do expect grades to be in the system within reason, typically within 1 week. In English class, 10-page paper, the teacher will have a little bit of leeway with that, but for most things, 1 week it should be in. We expect all of our teachers to engage in frequent parent communication and family outreach, and they log that parent communication in an internal behavior system that we have, so we can check and see how many parents have you contacted. And then it's just overall professionalism. How do you present yourself in meetings? How do you present yourself when you are working with your colleagues during professional development and things like that? And how this connects to student achievement is when the students see the teachers being active members of the school community, and increases the rapport among the students in the classroom. And it just sort of naturally, it supports the community and the overall morale of the school. And that helps the students feel more pride. And the teachers being able to reflect on their feedback allows them to grow professionally, both inside and outside the classroom. All right, so our last domain, which we call domain 5, is how all of this comes together to connect to student achievement. So student achievement, each academic team will set a goal at the beginning of the year to set individual goals for the students. So for most of the students, that means looking at their MCAS scores, because our students 6 through 10 at least take multiple MCASs, English, math, science. They take those, and that is an indicator of how we are performing to the state, and that is how we are held accountable to the state. And so we look at how the student performed the previous year, and we use that as a measure to set a goal for each individual student. Each of those then becomes a class goal and a teacher goal. And so the teacher will then monitor their progress of that goal through the mini assessments, through the quarterfinals, throughout the year. Subjects such as AP and let's say 11th grade English and math, which our students take the SAT, then we look at the standardized test scores. So for AP, we look at the scores from, we look at the global average from the previous year. So let's say AP language and composition, what is the percentage of students who scored 3 or higher average globally? And we just want our teachers to be above that. And we set their student learning goals based on that. The teachers, in addition to receiving their frequent feedback, we have a beginning of the year meeting with the teachers when we are setting the SLGs, so the teachers can look at them and they can ensure that they are reasonable learning goals set for each individual student. And then mid-year, we look at, okay, how are your students performing on these assessments, and where are you in relation to your student learning goal? And then at the end of the year, then they receive an additional evaluation based on the scores of the quarter 3 final.
Okay, so how do we implement the evaluations? We've talked about what the evaluation includes, things that we look at. So how do we actually use it at HCSS? What do we actually do? So how do teachers receive feedback? We have a in-house website called the HCSS Staff Portal. And what it allows us to do as curriculum supervisors, we have in the portal the 4 domains of Danielson and then the 5 for student achievement. And it walks us through the rubric. When we do a walkthrough, when we do an observation, we go through, we look at each item in the rubric, and we assign a rating 1 through 4 if it's something that we observed in the class. 3 is that meeting expectations. 3 is what we strive all of our teachers to be at with every standard of the Danielson model. But if there's areas that need improvement, that's part of evaluation. We want them to take that feedback, grow from it, and then the next time we're in there, we want to see them get from needs improvement to meeting expectations on whatever the item might be. So after we do a walkthrough and observation, we write up our notes, we write up our feedback, we submit ratings based on Danielson, and then we submit it to them. Teachers receive alerts from the portal to their email, so they know when it's in there. They're able to read the reviews. And then we have a mid-year check-in and an end-of-year check-in to kind of go over everything that has formally been written down. But if teachers have questions, there are instructional coaches that work with teachers at both campuses, and we can certainly check in with them on varying items in their evaluations as well in each rating. So in terms of student achievement and how we implement it, so it's really important to us that teachers evaluate and analyze their own data after each mini assessment and after each quarterfinal. After each quarterfinal is done, we ask that teachers really take a look at their quarterfinal grades and they create an action plan. And this action plan, they look at students and how they did on their quarterfinal versus their student learning goal. And they look at what students still need to improve, what students still need to make some more progress. And they create an action plan with what they're going to do for that student. Maybe it's targeted tutoring, maybe it's, reaching out more to home, maybe it's encouraging Zoom office hours, which we offer to our students. And how can that student get from partially meeting on their quarterfinal to meeting expectations on their next quarterfinal and eventually their MCAS. For student achievement, for most of our classes, our core classes, the Q3 final is our final test to show student achievement. We model our Q3 final after the MCAS for our core subjects, and we really look at those results as, okay, this is kind of a picture of how our students are going to do. Once the test results are in at the end of Q3, and we've compiled the rest of our observations, the rest of our staff portal feedback, we add everything into the portal, give one final evaluation submission, and then we have a final end of year meeting with teachers to talk about their evaluations. And then what is this data used for at the end of the year? Like I said, we have our final end of the year meetings. We meet with teachers and talk about the year as a whole. It helps with planning for the following school year, who's going to teach what grade level, that kind of thing. Final end of year evaluations do determine salary for the following school year, bonuses for teachers if they're exceeding expectations, things like that. It also helps to set student achievement goals for the next year. So how students did on this Q3 final this year is going to impact how we're going to set those student achievement goals for the following school year and what we're going to ask teachers to do the following school year. So going way back to the beginning of the presentation, when we said we're data driven and we use backwards design, these are the test results they're going to keep looking at year after year to improve their own performance and their planning for their classes and get their students to be successful. The final evaluation data also helps us create targeted needs for teachers. If there's teachers that had areas throughout the year that they were just continually needing needs improvement on, it helps us know who needs an instructional coach and what that instructional coach can help them with, and set some goals for improving themselves as a teacher, as an educator. So that's how we do student or teacher evaluation at HCSS. Are there any questions that we can answer for you?